Hello, welcome back to Lady Love Said Reads. My name is Jessica and this is my March and April wrap up. I am behind on my wrap ups, so I'm combining March and April and then I will be caught up. And I don't have any stats to share. I just don't want to take the time and add everything up. So I'm going to jump right into playing my MASH game. If you're new here, when I do my wrap-ups, I play a game called MASH. And MASH is a numbers game we used to play in the 90s when we were kids, and it basically predicts your future. So the categories that I use are house, and for house I share what setting I'd want to be in, job, I share from the books I read what job I'd want to have, romantic partner, from the books I've read I share which romantic partner I would pick, and family or friend group, obvious from the books I've read, which family or friend group I'd want to be a part of. So I draw 4 different titles from my apothecary jar and put them in the MASH categories. Let's go ahead and draw the first round. I don't know how many books I read, so I don't know how many rounds of this we'll do, but here we go. I Know a Secret by Tess Gerritsen. In Silence She Screams by Amo Jones. The Ashes in the Stargazer King by Carissa Broadbent. Bookshops and Bonedust by Travis Baldree. The Ashes in the Stargazer King by Carissa Broadbent. This is book 2 in the Crowns of Nyaxia series, and I actually DNF'd this. This is a book where I think with the first book in this series, I fell victim to the hype. I did not like the book all that much, but I kept telling myself it was good because so many people like it. I actually was thinking about DNFing it about halfway through, but I finished it because, again, everybody said it was so good. So this was the second book, and I started reading it and I realized that I just did not care. Like, I did not care one iota about the characters, about the plot, about what happens. And a month out, I do not regret DNFing it. So this is about, well, it's a high fantasy set in a vampire world, and there's like this war going on between 2 vampire clans and a romance that happens in there. And that's what I'll say to avoid spoilers. For MASH, I chose house or setting because of all the options in this draw. This fit best in house or setting. And I mean, there's some parts of the setting that seem interesting, though overall it's not really a place I would want to live. Yeah, it just fit best with the other options. Bookshops and Bonedust by Travis Baldree. This is the prequel to the very popular Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree, and it's categorized as like an adult cozy high fantasy. So pretty low stakes, pretty cozy setting, and lovable characters. So it's set at a bookshop in this town, and this warrior like has to stay in the town to recover after a battle because they are injured. And as she stays there, she develops a friendship with a bookstore owner and helps this bookshop get more business so it doesn't have to close its doors. Basically, they like have like a big sale and they do just all kinds of fun stuff. And then there's some other elements in there, like there's a big bad guy that they're trying to hunt down and all of that. And I gave this book 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. I found myself getting especially attached to the characters, which honestly is a little upsetting because in the next book, Legends and Latte, I guess a lot of these characters are not in that book. I especially was attached to the bookshop owner, Fern, who is like a rat person, and she's just so funny. So very enjoyable book if you like a cozy setting. It's, like I said, it's very low stakes, very cozy with lovable characters. 4 stars. For MASH, I did job because I would love to work in the bookstore with Fern. I Know a Secret by Tess Gerritsen. This is book 11 in the Rizzolian Isles series. And in this one, there's a series of murders happening, and the murders are reflective of the saints in the Catholic Church. So someone's murdering people in the same way that certain saints are martyred, and it all is connected back to this scandal that happened at a daycare like 20 years ago. And I didn't enjoy this. I gave this 2 stars. It's the first Tess Gerritsen I've read that I didn't love. And I didn't love it because I felt like it was missing all the elements that make this stand out from other like mystery thriller crime novels. Like the background of these murders is really something that the Mephisto Club, if you're familiar with this series, the Mephisto Club would be all over it. And Anthony Sansoni would be all over this case, and he wasn't there at all. I really miss that because part of what I love about this series is that Mephisto Club, which is like this secret society organized with the goal of tracking down spots of evil throughout the world. And so they really get into like mythology and symbolism and things like that. They would have been all over this case and they weren't there at all. And then the personal lives of Maura and Jane are just so repetitive in this. Like, once again, it's Maura and this love interest that's never gonna work out. And I'm like, it's getting old that the repetitive story with Maura right now is, I love him, we can't be together. I love him, we can't be together. And you know what would fix that? Anthony Sansoni. Because he clearly was interested in her. And we could abandon ship on this tired storyline of this guy that she can't ever actually be with and just move on with that. And then the same thing with Jane, like the same things are going on with her and her family. Like her mom is like, oh, I'm back with your dad and I'm miserable and like there's just family drama. Like Jane's normal family. Like there was nothing in this that moved the characters' storylines forward at all. It was very stagnant. And that's part of what makes this series great, is what's going on in the lives of Maura and Jane and the larger stories of like the Mephisto Club. And those all were absolutely absent from this. Is it a decent mystery thriller plot? Like, yeah, it's fine. But it really missed the mark on what makes her writing great. So I gave it 2 stars. For MASH, I picked Partner because even though he's not in this book, I really like Anthony Sansoni. I think he's really interesting and he would be so great with Maura. And I hope that this isn't Tess Gerritsen writing out the Mephisto Club and like being done with that. Oh, I hope that's not where this is going with the series. In Silence She Screams by Amo Jones. This is a dark romance. It's book 2 in the Midnight Mayhem series, which is a dark mafia circus. No, it's book 3 in the Midnight Mayhem series, which is a dark mafia circus. And I DNF'd this one. I loved the first book in this series, didn't love the second one, gave it 2 stars, but I kept reading it because it introduced this character that I thought was going to be really interesting in the third book. And the character is Lilith. So this is Lilith and Chiron's love story. And it was very disappointing. So Lilith is supposed to be like this Harley Quinn kind of character, but she's not. The only thing that makes her Harley Quinn is that she looks like Harley Quinn. Nothing that she actually does in this story indicates that she's at all unhinged. But all the characters around her are like, ooh, stay away from her. She's crazy. She's dark. She's twisted. She's demented. But she doesn't actually do anything dark, twisted, or demented. And like, there's insta-love happening in this, and there's like a polyamorous situation going on, which is totally fine, except that they'll like fall for each other in 3 days. And if there's one thing that I am going to DNF a romance for, it's going to be insta-love. Insta-love makes no sense to me. And it doesn't make it for an enjoyable romance. So I just didn't enjoy this. I DNF'd it at like 30% of the way through. I kept like hanging on because I was like, oh, I hope it gets back to how good like the first book was. And it didn't. So I DNF'd it, and I am now just not going to continue with Midnight Mayhem because it's a series that you do have to read in order for the books to make sense. So done with Midnight Mayhem. For MASH, I picked Family because, you know, once you're in this friend group, they've got your back. Round 2. Stargazer by Lori Petru. They Called Us Enemy by George Takei. Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney. It's Not You by Romani Diversala. They Called Us Enemy by George Takei. This is a graphic novel memoir about George Takei's experience in the U.S. Japanese concentration camps or internment camps, and basically what his family went through with that. It is excellent. Oh, and this was also gifted to me by my friend Alex at the Lair, so thank you, Alex. I gave this 4 stars. I thought it was just very well done. It's succinct, it's to the point, it honestly portrays his experience. It doesn't get into any other parts of his life. Like, there's a little bit about how he starts his acting career, but it really is just focused on his experience in the internment camps and the impact that that had on his life. An excellent read if this is something that you're interested in. I highly recommend it. For MASH, I picked Partner. His father, oh my gosh, the way he describes his father and how his father deals with the situation and just wants to protect his family and keep his family safe, and the choices that he's forced to make, and then how they talk through it afterwards. I was like just so enamored with him. He just seemed like such a person of high character, you know, like someone that really thinks about what he does and wants to make the right choice in every situation and reflects on his choices and admits when he's wrong. And like, what more could you want, you know? Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney. This is an adult literary fiction, and it's basically just about messy relationships. So there's a younger woman who's like in her early 20s, and she gets into a relationship with an older married man, and it covers just all the messiness that happens in that kind of a situation. And what I really like about Sally Rooney is that when she writes about these relationships, she doesn't really villainize anybody, but more just like looks at the complexity of it and all the different angles and all the different characters and their roles, their feelings, their thoughts, and all of that. She just does such a good study on what makes these relationships tick. I gave it 4 stars. For MASH, I picked Job because someone in there is like a book editor, and then another character is a poet. Anything to do with writing and editing, I'm going to enjoy. It's Not You by Romani Diversala. This is self-help nonfiction, and it is about recovering from narcissistic abuse. This was my favorite book in April, and it just is such a game changer if you've ever been in a narcissistic relationship with a narcissist. And she talks about different kinds of relationships. So relationships with a spouse, a parent, a sibling, a friend, a coworker, and gives advice on how to cope. And what I like about it is that she doesn't just say, oh, cut them out and leave, but she actually covers like what to do if you have to stay in the relationship and like how to deal with the situation. And it was a really helpful, major game changer for me. And I'm going to purchase the copy so that I can work through some of the exercises that she suggests, because I have experienced a lot of narcissistic abuse in my life. And even if you haven't experienced the abuse, it's still useful for you, because there's a very high likelihood that you're going to encounter someone with these narcissistic traits. And so it's good to arm yourself in advance for how to cope and deal with these people, because they are sneaky. For MASH, for It's Not You, I picked family or friend group because it would be great to have relationships with people who are not narcissists and who practice good, healthy relationship like strategies and boundaries and stuff like she talks about in the book. Stargazer by Lori Petru. This is adult literary fiction, dark academia, and it is about Diana Orell. They are college students and they go to this pretty interesting university in Canada. It's set at like a camp instead of a formal university campus, and all of your classes would be in cabins instead of big buildings. That sounds pretty cool to me, and there's like a lake and all of this. But anyway, Diana and Orell come from really wealthy, privileged backgrounds. Orell's mother is a really famous fashion designer, and Diana is her neighbor. They grew up living across the street from each other. They became really close friends. so close that there's like an unhealthy level of an enmeshment between the two, and they're super codependent, and it becomes just kind of a toxic situation. And I'd like to think that this is a good depiction of what happens when someone with borderline personality disorder gets into a relationship with a narcissist. I think that one of the characters is borderline and one of the characters is a narcissist, and it just really does a good job illustrating what happens in that kind of a relationship, how explosive it can be, how toxic. It's a wild ride. I really enjoyed it. It was my favorite book from March. I gave it 4 stars. For MASH, I picked setting because it would be really neat to be at this college setting that's like a campground sort of setting instead of a traditional university. That would be cool to experience. Round 3. So I drew round 3, but my camera died, and so I drew There Should Have Been 8 by Nalini Singh, Blue Nights by Joan Didion, The Hawthorne Legacy by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, and Murder Most Frothy by Cleo Coyle. There Should Have Been 8 by Nalini Singh. This is an adult thriller. It's an isolated setting and people start dropping. And so you basically are trying to figure out who done it and, you know, the underlying story there. I enjoyed this when I read it. It does have visual impairment rep. One of the characters is losing her vision. And I mean, it's not a bad book. It's a fun ride, but being like a couple months out now, I have not thought about this book once. I did give it 3 stars, I think, maybe 3.5 stars. For MASH, I chose setting because it takes place at this family estate, and there's like moments where they're discovering old like letters and things from the family that used to live there, and that seems pretty fun and cool. Blue Nights by Joan Didion. This is an adult memoir, and it's basically about how her loved ones are dying. I didn't love it. So one thing important to note here as I talk about it though is I've never read anything by Joan Didion before, and I do think that you need to have a solid background in her work and her life before you tackle this book, because she writes in a way that she assumes you already know things about her, which honestly is kind of irritating, but like she assumes you already know who she is and you already know what she's written, you already know who her family members are, and you know, that's kind of pretentious. It's just a lot of name dropping of all these famous people that she knows. Also found that to be kind of pretentious. She talks about the death of her daughter, and like it's tragic and it's terrible, but I didn't really feel anything as I was reading it, so I didn't love this one. I do think that her writing was pretty good, like overall, like the writing was pretty good, so I gave it 3 stars, but I don't recommend it. For MASH, I picked Job. Again, anything with writing I think I'd enjoy. The Hawthorne Legacy by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is book 2 in the Inheritance Game series, which is a young adult thriller. And in this book, Avery inherits a billionaire's estate and doesn't know why. DNA test shows she's not related to any of the family, so these books are just her trying to figure out the mystery of why she's inheriting this estate. And she gets to know some of the family members, develops crushes on a couple of the brothers. It's just a fun time. It's a fun ride. It's very much in line with like a Karen and McManus YA thriller where there are some stakes, but it's not over the top graphic or anything like that. The ending was a little bit not believable in this one. It did feel a little over the top and silly, but it wasn't necessarily a bad thing. Like, it just made me kind of chuckle, like, okay, that's a little much there. But I will continue with this series and read book 3. I gave it 3.5 stars, I believe. For MASH, I picked Partner because there is one of the brothers in this that cracks me up. Not one of the younger brothers, the brother that's interested in Avery's older sister. Nash, I think his name is. He cracks me up and I think he's interesting. Murder Most Frothy by Cleo Coyle. This is book 4, I believe. It doesn't, but I think it's book 4. Yes, book 4 in the Coffee House Mystery series by Cleo Coyle. This is a cozy mystery series. And what I love about this series is how much it features coffee and how much I learn about coffee, like where the coffee beans are grown and the harvesting practices and the roasting practices and the different recipes. And this does include some like various coffee recipes in it. And the setting is typically at a New York coffee shop, which I also love because I love New York City. But this one actually takes place in the Hamptons because the main character, Claire, has taken a job serving coffee for this really rich person at their estate through the summer. And I ended up really missing the New York setting. I ended up missing the coffee bar that she works at in New York and the characters and the people that work for her there. And I didn't love it. I didn't love this one. It was kind of a dud for me. I gave it 2 stars. The mystery itself was fine. There's a new character introduced who's kind of interesting, but I think she's not going to continue having him part of the story in the next book just based on how it wraps up. So I felt like kind of a letdown there. I don't know. It was similar to like the Rizzolian Isles, where it's like there just wasn't much movement going on in their lives or development in the main characters like Claire, her husband, her daughter, Madame. It just felt kind of stagnant in this. It felt a little bit like a filler volume, and I will continue the series because I've enjoyed the previous 3 a lot, and there's like 19 books in this series, so there's bound to be a dud every now and again. I gave it 2 stars. For MASH, I picked Family because Claire like truly loves her kid, and they have their dysfunctions, but you can tell how much they love each other, so that'd be a fun little family to be a part of. Plus, like, you get to solve murder mysteries. Round 4. Clockwork Prince by Cassandra Clare. Rainbows Over Puddleduck Farm by Della Galton. The Courage to be Disliked by Ichiro Kishimi and Fumitake Koga. And Bride by Ali Hazelwood. Okay, this one was kind of hard. The Courage to be Disliked by Ichiro Kishimi and Fumitake Koge. This is an adult nonfiction self-help, and I hated this. I gave it 1 star. I found it to be extremely problematic. The premise of this book: are you depressed? Have you tried not being depressed? It's so dismissive. It's so invalidating. It's not based in any actual cognitive or psychological science. I think it actually does harm to people who struggle with mental health issues, and I hate it. I wish it didn't exist. For MASH, I picked Setting because I would love to be at the interview. So the way the book is set up is it's set up as like an interview. Like this kid is interviewing a philosopher and asking him, what's the meaning of happiness? And the philosopher is like giving him the answer. And so for Setting, I'd love to be at that interview so I could rip them both a new one. Rainbows Over Puddleduck Farm by Della Galton. This is an adult, contemporary, cozy, and it's just a slice of life book with absolutely no stakes. It's book 2 in the Puddleduck series. I read the first one back in February, and it's set on this farm in England. And the main character is a veterinarian. Her grandmother owns and operates the farm where she does like animal rescue. And then there's like love interests, and it's just sweet and cozy and like good escapism. So I read these books when I need to escape into a world where nothing bad is happening, where I can be with the animals and I can be with people who are kind and just like live in that little universe for a little bit. Has a lot of high stress in April, so I ended up reading this then, and it does what I need it to do. It makes me feel safe, it makes me feel cozy, it helps me regulate my nervous system. I don't think that a lot of people are going to enjoy these, but if you use books like I do to cope in those kinds of situations, give it a try. I find these are really helpful. And I gave it 3 stars. For MASH, I picked a Job because I would want to do what her grandmother is doing and run the farm doing animal rescue. Clockwork Prince by Cassandra Clare. This is book 2 in the Infernal Devices series, which is a YA high fantasy, and I gave this 3.5 stars. I like this one better than Clockwork Angel, and basically in this one it continues on the main storyline from book 1, but there's more complexity because there's something happening at the London Institute where the person who runs it might be ousted, and there's higher stakes between Jim and Will, and I don't know, it was a fun ride. I didn't love it. Like I wasn't obsessed with it. I don't know. I don't know if Cassandra Clare is for me. I'm going to give the last book a try because you saw I checked it out from the library in my May TBR, but I don't know, y'all. I don't know. Yeah, I'll give it a try, but I can't say that this is a new favorite. When I think of my favorite YA fantasy or whatever, there's so much better than this. Anyway, for MASH, I picked Partner. I do like Jem. I think Jem is an interesting character. And then Bride by Allie Hazelwood. I actually DNF'd this after like the first 20 pages. Allie Hazelwood is not for me. I find her characters to be absolutely vapid and her writing to be amateur and unpolished. That is so harsh, but that's just how I feel about her writing. And for this I picked Family because basically in this story it's like a family of vampires and a family of werewolves, and this girl's family is making her do an arranged marriage with a werewolf pack leader to create peace among the families. So it'd be fun to come from like a supernatural family like that, so that's what I picked for MASH. I don't know if this is going to be the last round. Let me look and just see how many I have left. This will be the last round. There's 5, so I'll have the usual 4 plus a bonus. The bonus draw is always a wild card, and it can be any of those MASH categories. The Djinn Waits 100 Years by Shubnam Khan. Start With Why by Simon Sinek. Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. People Like Her by Ellery Lloyd. And Stolen Focus by Johann Hari. Stolen Focus by Johann Hari. This is adult nonfiction, and it's about the attention economy. So Johann gets into why big companies are moving to getting people's attention as their main focus in terms of like advertising, and how our attention eventually leads to our wallets. And I gave this 1 star. What I think would have been better with this book. So the first part of the book where he actually talks about the attention economy and big tech, that was pretty good. And then it goes off the wall. And he talks about like our food systems, and is the food we eating causing our brains to not be able to hold attention anymore. And then the worst part, the part that made me give it 1 star, was he talks about ADHD, and he has the audacity to compare children with ADHD to caged animals in a zoo. And like, that is so problematic. And yeah, I gave it 1 star. For MASH, I picked Job because I would love to be his editor and tear his book up. Start With Why by Simon Sinek. This is also nonfiction, and it is exploring a lot of businessy stuff. If you don't have a background in business or like an education in business, you probably should skip this one because he uses a lot of business jargon. And he talks about, you know, the attention economy is part of this, but more so about like how to be a charismatic speaker and how to be a charismatic person. Because his main point is that people will pay attention to what you do and how it aligns with what you say you're gonna do. So basically, like, you have to figure out what you're doing and why you're doing it, and then stick with that why and stay consistent. So that's like the gist. I gave it 3 stars. I thought it was interesting. I thought it was helpful. I haven't really thought about it much since I read it, but I think that it's something that I'll use at work with a project that I'm doing at work. So I guess in that way, you know, it's kind of helpful. For MASH, I picked, okay, this is gonna sound weird, but I picked Partner because he seems like a very thoughtful and intentional person, and that would be something I would like look for in a partner. Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. This is new adult romance about college students. One is a figure skater, one is an ice hockey player, and something goes weird with their rinks, their skating rinks, so that they have to share a rink now, and the teams have to, like, the figure skaters and the hockey players have to figure out like a schedule and work together and yada yada. And I didn't like this. I thought that the romance was kind of insta love. I didn't like the characters. I didn't think that they were very well developed, and I didn't give it any stars because I DNF'd it. But for MASH, I picked Family or Friend Group because the hero and the heroine in this both have like really good healthy friendships. It's just like they're relationship is so insta-lovey and weird. So The Djinn Waits 100 Years by Shubnam Khan. This was such a good book. I gave it 5 stars. It's about like a haunted house in South Africa, and the house, everybody who it's like subdivided, right? So it's apartments, and the people that live here, they're all from like India or Pakistan, and they all have like really unique and interesting stories. So we get to learn about the people that live there now, but then there's also a second timeline from when this house was built and the house's original owners. And the main character, Sana, finds a pack of letters and like a journal from Mina, who is one of the original people who owned and lived in the house. And so she gets to learn Mina's story, and like all of this like intersects and interacts, and there's like ghosts, and there's Djinn, and there's like spooky things that happen. It's got like gothic vibes, and I just thought it was absolutely beautiful, and I loved it. I loved this book. I really hope that Shubnam Khan continues to write in this style, because I just loved it so very much. Gave it 5 stars. For MASH, I picked Setting Her House because that house sounds so cool. Like the original owners had giraffes, and they had a lion, and they had just beautiful rose gardens. I'm like, wow, would I love to be in that situation. And last but not least, People Like Her by Ellery Lloyd. This is an adult. I think this is more contemporary than it is thriller. And it's about a woman and her husband, and the woman who does social media for a living. So she is an influencer. She focuses on parenting as her platform, and she has a stalker. So there's 3 points of view. There's the husband, the wife, and then the stalker's points of view. And it's really interesting. This is actually a husband and wife pair that write. Ellery Lloyd is a pseudonym for Colette Lyons and Paul Vlitos. So they're a husband and wife. And I wonder, like, does Colette write the wife's point of view, and does, what's his name, Paul write the husband's point of view? Like, that would be kind of interesting to know. But I really enjoyed this. This is not your typical thriller, and I think that people who dislike it go into it thinking it's going to be like a fast-paced thriller. This is more of a slow, character-driven read that really explores what it means to be an influencer. And like, are influencers fake? Do they create false personas that they're putting online and selling? How do you be safe when you're online in these situations? Is it right to put your kids on your social media? Like, it has these really important questions about social media and, you know, having that online influencer life. And I just really liked this book. It does a really slow build to the end. So there is like this cumulative or climactic event that happens at the end that's sort of thrillery and really dark, and whoo, it got me. It made me feel a little sick to my stomach when this was happening, but I thought it was a really good build up to that. And it's sort of like other books I've read where it's like slow, but then in the end just everything becomes a huge mess and just explodes. The Secret History kind of does this, where there's just like a slow build and then the end is just absolute chaos. And Bunny by Mona Awad does this, where it's kind of a slow build, but the end is absolute chaos. And this is the same thing. It's a very slow build, but the ending, it's like, whoa, so much happens at once, but it makes sense based on how the writers built up to that event. And I did give this book 4.5 stars. For MASH, I picked Job because the husband is actually a writer. So he's a stay-at-home dad who works as a writer. He's a novelist, and then she is the Instamom. It's really interesting. So if you like those themes about influencing and social media, I'd say give it a go. Just know that it's very slow and very character-driven. Wrap-ups are always such a marathon for me. They take me a very long time to film and edit. So I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know down below if you have read any of these books, if you like them, if you didn't like them. Let me know how your March and April went. If you just want to leave me a emoji to let me know that you're here, go ahead and leave me the shooting star emoji for Stargazer, since this is my favorite book in March. And until next time, make sure that you continue to read good books, drink good coffee, take care of yourselves and each other. Bye!